Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're going to explore this incredible intersection where ancient mythology crashes right into hard archaeological facts. We're looking at the great epic of the Uyghur Turks. You see, this isn't just some campfire folktale. It's a deeply moving, actually pretty tragic narrative about a civilization's profound loss, a total environmental collapse, and a desperate search for a new homeland. As you'll see, we're tracking how a story passed down through generations actually perfectly mirrors the physical historical realities of ancient Silk Road cities. Okay, I want you to just imagine standing in a dying land. The rivers, which used to be rushing with water, have completely dried up. The soil is literally cracking beneath your feet. Crops are failing everywhere, and sickness is just tearing through the population. In this totally desolate landscape, the ancient epic tells us that the animals, the trees, and the very wind itself began wailing this chilling, inescapable command to survive. Goch, goch, migrate, migrate. It's a haunting image, right? But you've got to wonder, what could cause an entire environment to just suddenly turn against its own people? Section 1, the sacred mountains fall. So right at the very heart of the Uyghur Empire stood the Kutlu Dağ, also known as the Yadatashi, or the Holy Rock. Now, this wasn't just a cool landmark. It was the absolute literal and spiritual bedrock of the Uyghur civilization. The legend goes that as long as this mountain remained untouched, the Uyghur lands would be blessed with endless prosperity, incredible agricultural fertility, and unbroken peace. It basically anchored their entire way of life and their deep connection to the natural world. But then comes a fatal trade. It's crazy how a single, incredibly short-sighted political decision set the stage for an unimaginable tragedy. After the death of their strong ruler Yulin Tegin, his son, Yalik Tegin, takes power. And he's looking to build an alliance and secure peace with China, so he arranges a marriage with a Chinese princess named Qulian. But the Chinese? They knew exactly where the Uyghurs' true power lay. In exchange for the princess, they didn't ask for gold. They demanded the Kutlu Dağ. And in a disastrous lapse of judgment, the Uyghur ruler actually agreed to hand over their sacred mountain. Now, you obviously can't just pick up a mountain and walk away with it, right? It was way too massive to move whole. So the epic describes how the Chinese engineers used this brutal step-by-step method to dismantle it. Basically, they lit massive fires all around the sacred rock until it was blazing hot, and then they poured freezing cold vinegar right over the heated stone. The extreme shock in temperature caused the bedrock to just fracture and shatter apart. Piece by piece, they carried the shattered rock back to China. And the real tragedy is, as those carts rolled away, they carried the Uyghurs' prosperity right along with them. Section 2, Nature's Cry to Migrate. With the rock gone, the natural balance was just completely destroyed. The legendary narrative says that without the holy rock, the rivers literally instantly stopped flowing. That rich, fertile agricultural soil turned straight to dust, and devastating illnesses swept indiscriminately through both the animal herds and the human population. This total, catastrophic ecological collapse is exactly what led to that haunting cry of Guch from the wind, basically forcing the Uyghur Turks to completely abandon their ancestral homeland in the Orkhon Valley and make a desperate migration to the southwest. And this brilliantly illustrates our main takeaway here, because the tragic mythological drought, it's actually an echo of a very real historical event. While the epic frames the disaster as nature punishing the Uyghurs for giving away their sacred stone, modern archaeology actually gives us the physical mechanism behind the myth. The historical reality was the catastrophic failure of their incredible underground Karez water systems. When this highly complex engineering marvel stopped functioning, whether that was through climate shifts or maybe just maintenance failures, the water literally did stop flowing, and the land truly did die. Moving on to Section 3, Unearthing the Ancient Epic. To prove this epic was actually grounded in physical history, generations of archaeologists from all around the world ventured into the Orkhon Valley and East Turkestan. Looking at the timeline here, in the late 19th century, Russian Turkologists like Wilhelm and Vasily Radlov began studying the initial inscriptions and ruins. Then, by the early 20th century, this golden age of exploration kicked off. And even today, organizations like TIKA are out there supporting joint excavations with Turkish, Mongolian, and Chinese scientists to continue unearthing these ancient cities. And I have to say, those early expeditions were nothing short of legendary themselves. You had pioneers like the Prussian Albert von Lecoq, the British-Hungarian Sir Aurel Stein, and the Swedish explorer Sven Hedin braving the incredibly harsh, unforgiving deserts of the Silk Road. They didn't just stumble on a few scattered ruins. They actually mapped completely forgotten sprawling cities like Turfan and Hokshu, and they managed to rescue thousands of historical manuscripts from the creeping desert sands. Section 4, Artifacts of the Sands. So what exactly did they pull out of the dirt? Well, this incredible catalog of excavated artifacts shows a bustling, highly advanced Silk Road metropolis. We're talking wooden printing blocks in Uyghur, Manichaean, and Sogdian, which proves the Uyghurs were utilizing some of the world's absolute earliest printing technology. They uncover these breathtaking frescoes in Bezeklik and Hocho depicting Kagans and myths, alongside clay, plaster, and bronze statues of Buddha and Mani. They found coins and official seals with Uyghur script and gorgeous Silk Road textiles and ceramics that proved these cities were the vibrant, beating heart of international trade. But out of all the artifacts, honestly, this one might be the most poignant. Archaeologists discovered these small carved amulets and talismans themed around the Yadatashi, the sacred Kutluda. It's just fascinating how these small, tangible objects directly connect the grand emotional mythology of the migration epic to the everyday physical reality of the Uyghur citizens. It essentially proves that the belief in the holy mountain wasn't just some high-level story for kings. It was a protective charm worn by everyday people, deeply woven into their daily lives. Let's look at Section 5, Anatomy of a Uyghur City. To really grasp what was lost, you have to understand how a typical ancient Uyghur city was structured. It was almost like a giant bullseye. Right smack in the middle was the inner castle, or the Hakan Saray. This was the highest, most heavily fortified center of the entire city. Behind these tall, thick mud brick walls lay the Kagan's palace, the central state treasury, and the homes of all the high-ranking bureaucrats. It was the heavily protected core of royal and administrative power. Now, surrounding that imposing fortress was the outer city and market, the vibrant, sprawling economic heart. And this wasn't some chaotic, messy settlement, no. It was divided by very orderly, planned streets filled with civilian homes, artisan workshops, and bakeries. Because these cities sat right on the Silk Road, this outer area was also absolutely packed with bustling caravanserais, which were essentially ancient hotels and trade hubs where foreign merchants from all over the known world would gather to exchange goods, ideas, and cultures. And perfectly reflecting that exchange of ideas was the Temple District. The religious diversity of the ancient Uyghurs was honestly stunning. They built these massive architectural complexes dedicated to major world religions, specifically Manichaeism and Buddhism. We're not talking about small shrines here. These were towering temples complete with grand prayer halls, housing for monks, and vast libraries filled with those printed texts we talked about earlier. It was a thriving society that fully embraced and synthesized multiple major faiths. Surrounding all of this, the whole shebang, were thick defensive walls, watchtowers, and moats. But here's the thing. A city in a harsh climate absolutely cannot survive on walls alone. And this brings us to the most crucial point, the Kharez system. This was an absolute marvel of subterranean engineering. It was a network of underground channels that tapped into aquifers and safely transported water across long distances to irrigate the surrounding farmlands, all without evaporating in the blistering desert heat. And it was this exact engineering marvel that failed. When the Kharez system broke down, the fields dried up, leading to the massive environmental collapse that the migration epic remembers as the shattering of the sacred stone. As we wrap up this explainer, I think it's pretty clear that the Uyghurs' tragic epic is far, far more than just an ancient myth. It's a brilliant cultural memory of a very real ecological disaster. It serves as this chilling reminder of how deeply human prosperity, no matter how advanced the civilization is fundamentally tied to environmental balance. The water stopped, the balance tipped, and a great, powerful empire literally had to pack up and walk away. Looking at our own modern civilization today, with our own highly fragile environmental dependencies, it really leaves us with a haunting question. If our resources fail, will we too hear the wind cry, migrate?